This video is only one part of an in-depth review, so check out the rest at thegoodride.com. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, I'm James Beastie. This is The Good Ride. Thanks for being here. This is the ride Superpig, and next to it is the ride Warpig. Next to that is the Psychocandy Unisex for 2022. I rode this in a wide variety of conditions. I was not lucky enough to get this in powder this year. Conditions just weren't great this year, but I've gotten this in powder in the past. I primarily rode it with my Burton Kendos and my Union Atlas, but I did try some other bindings here and there with it too. To give you a short summary, this takes the same shape of the Warpig that so many people love and gives it a little bit of camber underfoot, and it really transforms the ride where the Warpig feels a little bit more like tapered mountain freestyle. Very buttery, very playful, fun to turn, but not a super hard carver, and the Superpig kind of appeals more to that person who wants that kind of tapered directional shape but with a little more carving power, and that's what the Superpig does. It's very wide, it's very aggressive, it's slow to turn, but once you get it on edge, the turning experience is really fun. So it's a fun turner, and overall it's just a fun tapered one board quiver for those who want it to be good, pretty much doing a little bit of everything, great at nothing. And it's a very fun ride. While I really enjoyed the Psychocandy probably the most out of these three, this was really fun too and really had some strong points, especially when it comes to carving. When it comes to sizing, this 51 felt right. It definitely does feel like a little more board than a 151 Ride Warpig with that flat camber profile. This little bit of camber just really seems to make the board feel like it's a little bit more, it's got a little bit more oomph to it. But it fit my specs really well. My size 9 boots and my 190-ish pounds when I was riding this. Now, when it comes to the shape, it's tapered by a little bit, I think 10 mil, and it's pretty directional, but it still rides really centered on board. Just like the Warpig, the Psychocandy next to it at the end here is kind of like an honorary pig because it takes the Warpig shape and makes it a little more tapered and directional. That felt a little more set back on board, a little bit more on that surfier side of like kind of a one board tapered directional all mountain kind of thing going for it. Where this felt a little more centered, but it didn't mess with the taper or make it feel super washy. It feels pretty good between the feet and barely washy in comparison to a double ender, same width in the tip and tail. The camber profile is stable and feels really good one footing and flat basing off the chair or down a long flat cat track. It has a very consistent feel in all conditions from hard snow to powder that I really like. And you can skid turns pretty well with this. I think an intermediate could handle it. It's a little wide. It's a little harder to skid turns than the same camber profile with a narrower board, but overall it's really easy. Now when it comes to flex, this feels stiff, really stiff right here, but then softens up a little bit in the tip and tail. Out of all three boards here, the Superpig was the hardest to butter, the Warpig a little easier, and then the Psychocandy even easier. It seems to have a little bit softer flex, at least these demo boards did. But this has a really good energy. It's got this kind of like pop to it that, I don't know, it's just got this fun kind of spring, poppy, energetic feel without being too poppy to where it loses its dampness. This still felt like a perfect balance between being pretty damp and pretty poppy. It took a little more work to access it than the other two boards, but it's still easily accessible for an average rider like myself. Now, when it comes to speed, I think this is my favorite of the three, and it just, maybe it's the camber profile or maybe it's something else, but I just felt like this was just a little more fun to point it than the other boards. It felt a little more aggressive, a little more damp, a little faster. It had good base glide, not amazing, but definitely upper tier base glide. When it comes to uneven terrain, This does a good job as long as you don't have to kind of turn through big groovy bumps. When it comes to the turning experience, it really has a cool feel to it. It's got a deep side cut, but it doesn't flinch if you want to do long, high-speed, drawn-out S-turns. It did that really well, but then it's also really fun in like getting in a wiggle or a banked slalom kind of experience. I felt like this was holding well in the wiggle and did a great job with, you know, for its width. And I think it likes a circle carve. It likes across the groomer carves a little more than the straight line, but it's very balanced. When it comes to carving, this thing rails a turn. It's not the best carving experience I've ever had. Like, I took it out against the Yes Y, kind of more carve friendly, and that was a little better carve, but this is great for carving and it really powers through a turn well. And it's definitely, that's the standout of this board. If you want this kind of ride like the Warpig, but you want to carve harder, this is where the Superpig sits. When it comes to edge hold, the grip is really good. I tested it against some disrupted side cuts and they were a little better, but this multi-radius side cut did a really good job at gripping if you hit a hard patch without slipping. You definitely had to dial back your commitment to that edge or really get your twist on if you can, but sometimes you get surprise and it just suddenly, it's icy and you're not prepared for it. It still held okay. So you just had to kind of go, whoop. And where some boards with disrupted side cuts, let's say like the GNU Gremlin or the Yes Y or the Yes Hybrid and other boards like that, Libtech Orca, they have such a disrupted side cut, you can power into some ice and the edge will just hold and send you through and you won't even flinch. Now, when it comes to powder, there is a good setback on board here, but not an amazing setback on board. And that's one of the prices you pay for that more centered, all mountain kind of feel. It's like I constantly say with these boards, they're like tapered directional all mountain. They do a little bit of everything great, but nothing amazing. So if you're thinking about getting this as like a powder board, like your primary powder board, you might be a little disappointed. It's wide, it's got a tapered directional ride to it. The tail is narrower than the nose. It's got a pretty big nose, but it's just, when I tested this a few years ago, I think in the same size, it just didn't have the float like a lot of boards with similar shape, mainly because they're just so much more setback on board. So they've just got that easy directional float. But look, it's no slouch. It's kind of like a lot of like all mountain free ride boards when it comes to directional float, and it does a good job, just not amazing. When it comes to riding switch, this is very doable. I mean, 10 times out of 10, I'll pick the Twin Pig if you want a switch ride. But for a tapered directional board, this rides switch incredibly well. For hit and park, I went through the pipe in this. It just felt a little too wide for me. And I think Nick might enjoy this off a kicker, but overall, it didn't feel as much of a park ride as the Warpig and Psychocandy did. It felt like it belonged more on the mountain carving and hitting natural kickers, but I think in the park could hit some big kickers and do just fine. So overall, I think the Superpig's main standout is carving. So if you're interested in the Pig line and you want something a little more powerful to turn, a little more aggressive than the Warpig, then you've got the Superpig here. I think it works with a wide variety of riding styles and it blends well into a quiver, or would be a great one board quiver for those who need a little bit of everything but like more directional riding than riding switch. This could work for you. All our reviews are a best effort, objective opinion from an average rider's perspective. There's no brand oversight, and we're free to say whatever we want. We send back everything unless it's a favorite, then we ask to keep those or straight up buy them. Now, if you need advice, fill out the eHarmony profile in the Contact Us section of the site. It's the only way I can help you properly. If you want to support us, and if what we reviewed appeals to you, it helps if you buy through our links. So, thanks for watching.